Brighter Light, Darker Shadow by Backing into Infinity, read by Oak Shadow 5. This episode contains chapter 26 and 27, so let's get right into chapter 26, A New Visitation. Summary: Katsuki goes to visit someone. Izuku is reflected upon in a variety of ways. 1 week after the camp and 2 weeks before the licensing exam, Katsuki finds himself standing at the gates of a juvenile detention center near UA. He rubs his shoulder as he waits for the gate guard to authenticate his ID, so from another week of constant training. His ultimate moveset, as he liked to call it, was progressing well. He had the hang of shooting off explosions during high-speed movement, thanks to practice and some tips from Mina, and he was continuing to practice a small group of dance movements to integrate them into his fighting style. Explosion inertia was proving a bit more difficult to contend with. Firing them off in close combat worked about half the time, but Katsuki felt like he was hitting a wall with it. And dashing behind opponents required actually passing them first, which was harder than it sounded, even with the advantage of moving faster than a speeding vehicle that his current low percent of 1-for-all gave him. Izuku, however, was turning into an absolute terror in hand-to-hand thanks to his training. Katsuki didn't know what ectoplasm had awakened in him, but Izuku had taken to predicting his opponents like a fish in water. Half the time they sparred now, it felt like Izuku was not only predicting his movements, but predicting Katsuki, predicting that Izuku would predict his movements, a feat that made Katsuki's head hurt if he thought about it for more than a few seconds. The cheerful way Izuku explained it was bone-chilling as well. Something about hearing a small green-haired teen dissect every aspect of the thought process while he was punching your lights out just struck right at Katsuki's spine. The guard finished authenticating his ID and the gate swung open. Katsuki was led through the center to the room he had an appointment at. Aizawa had put him aside during the week and explained Himiko Toga's situation to him, then asked for him to help them out. Aizawa had honored Katsuki's request of treating the attempted serial killer kindly, getting her into a rehab center for delinquents instead of letting her go straight to prison. She was in a rather strict confinement, but she was relatively cooperative with the therapist so far. Additionally, an investigation had been opened into her parents that had started to bear fruit before it stalled, requiring Himiko's testimony before it could proceed. Apparently, the girl in question had been resistant to elaborating on her childhood and its trauma, but she had asked to be allowed to talk to Katsuki. Of course, he had agreed. The encounter at the mall had been somewhat chilling, yes, but Katsuki had started to feel like he really connected with her at the end. Himiko seemed like someone who had just lost the way, more than a legitimately dangerous killer, and Katsuki could see a lot of himself in her. They both had dangerous quirks that could easily be perceived as villainous, unless you were one of his rather biased middle school teachers, and both of them struggled with emotions or instincts driving them to take harmful and aggressive actions. In a way, talking to her would be a personal quest for him. After all, if he didn't preach redemption and second chances for others, could he ever forgive himself for his own crass and bullying ways? "Hey, Katsu-chan," Himiko says as he walks into her small room, her voice much more subdued than he remembers. "Hey, Himiko, it's good to see you again," he says, sitting down on an armchair across from her. "Is it really? I'm not blood-stuffed anymore, and the nice therapist lady has been working with me to understand the things I did. I know it was pretty wrong." "It really is, I promise. You did some shitty fucking things, yeah, and I was absolutely shitting myself when you held me up, but I did genuinely hope you could get the help you need, and me being here to see you again is proof that you found at least some of it." "Right. All that stuff you said about second chances right before they arrested me. It's so cool that you meant that, Katsu-chan. I've never met someone like you before. You really are treating me like I'm normal," Himiko says, perking up a little. "You are normal, Himiko. And I'm sure your therapist has stressed this too. All those fucking idiots at this school were wrong to tell you otherwise." "And my parents?" Himiko says, looking vulnerable as she opened up a bit. "Absolutely your parents. Those fuckwits didn't know what a great daughter they had before they fucking abused you." "They didn't abuse me," Himiko protests. "They just wanted me to fit in. They tried to help me." "Have you told your therapist about the things they did to help you?" "No! If I do, they'll send them to jail." "Why?" "Because they think it was abuse." "Maybe if the fucking expert thinks that there might be a good motherfucking reason." "There can't be!" Himiko shouts at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. "They were all I had." "Then find some new people and stop fucking moping." "Hoo, I'm a horrible, weird person now. I hurt so many people while I was on the streets. I can't even leave this place for at least 6 months. Who are you to suggest that, with your stupid, handsome face and a hero-class privilege?" "Someone who fucking understands what it's like to have people be afraid of you. To see someone fucking shy away because you hurt them with your quirk or hurt someone they fucking cared about. Katsuki shouts back at her, panting a little as his emotions got to him. Someone who knows how fucking valuable it is to have someone accept you despite that, and who knows just how brain-dead simple it is to get led astray by an accepting authority figure. Himiko stopped shouting and looked at him, considering his words for a moment. She seemed taken aback by the tirade, sitting in her chair and toying with her hair. You do understand, don't you, Katsu-chan? She says finally, chewing each word and weighing him over and over. I do, Katsuki says, his voice ragged with emotion. I swear to fucking God I do, and I'm telling you that you need help, and it's okay to talk to your therapist about your childhood. But then I still have nobody. Isn't someone bad better than no one at all? Then you have me, Katsuki says immediately. I'll visit as often as I can before I get released, and I'll bring my friend Izuku, who might be the only person more obsessed with knives than you. You have a friend who likes knives? Himiko says, her voice a little hopeful now. Okay, I'll do my best to talk if you promise to come back. I promise I will, Katsuki says, standing up to leave. Katsu-chan? Himiko calls after him, causing him to pause in the doorway. How much of it was real, what you said to me at the mall? How much of it was just lies to keep me still? A lot of it was fake, honestly. The tea was disgusting. But I really do think you're cool, and that you deserve a second chance. There's just one big inaccuracy, Himiko, Katsuki says with a cheerful grin. Unfortunately for you, I'm both incredibly gay and incredibly taken. Damn it! Himiko shouts with a laugh as he waves at her, stepping out of the room to report to her officer. And he looked so pretty in blood too. Oh, well, maybe the friend with all the knives is available. That was chapter 26, and now we continue on to chapter 27, a new provision. Summary. The provisional licensing exam begins. Izuku meets a dark mirror of himself, then kicks ass. Izuku fidgets nervously as the UA bus pulls up to the provisional licensing exam. Despite spending the last few weeks in an incredibly intense training, he didn't feel like it was ever possible to be ready enough. If he passed, he would be quite possibly the first quirkless person ever to get a provisional license, and that was a daunting prospect. Aizawa wasn't telling them anything about the exam, but Izuku figured it would be some sort of combat pass trial to start, and the disadvantage the sports festival gave them was prevalent on his mind. If you could use his analysis to predict an opponent's movements from on-the-spot cues, how much more dangerous would a group of students with months to prepare and examine them be? Hopefully, the growth in the last semester would be enough for them to prevail, because the bus was stopping now. Izuku files off the bus with his classmates, bumping shoulders with Kachan to receive some reassurance. He takes a deep breath, trying to put his old social anxiety to rest and focus on the powerful, confident person he was today. Plus Ultra! The class cheers, a few of them startling at the sudden addition to their chant. You are Rashi! Another student in a similar uniform, Izuku thought they might be from Shiketsu, approaches the UA circle and chastises the interloper. It is rude to insert yourself into other schools' chants. I'm so sorry, the tall student shouts, seemingly unable to lower his volume. All your hot-bloodedness had me so riled up, such passion. Yeah, I hope you're proper riled up so when we crush you in the exam it's worth our time. Kachan fights back with equal vigor, palms crackling as he stares down the other boy. Hi, looks like everyone's getting along well. A student wearing yet another unfamiliar uniform waves at Class 1A as he walks over to them. A friendly smile is plastered on his face, and it sends shivers down Izuku's spine. He knows what a threatening smile looks like after all. We're getting along fantastic here, Izuku says, stepping forwards with an unsettling smile of his own. I'm Midori Izuku, resident gremlin. So pleased to meet you. I hope there won't be any trouble. I'm Shindo Yo, Shindo says, grabbing Izuku's hand and shaking it. It's a pleasure to meet someone as enthusiastic as I am for this exam. Good luck. I hope you don't stumble anywhere. Thanks, Shindo. I hope I don't stumble either. I have a lot of sharp points after all. I might impale someone on the way down. The unfamiliar students break away to return their respective classes, and 1A makes their way into the auditorium, buzzing with nerves and excitement all the way. Alright, I'm going to split off from the rest of you as soon as the event starts, Izuku says to his classmates as he clips the sensors to his chest. I can't leverage my abilities at stealth and ambush takedowns if I'm moving in a large group. No problem, knock him dead, nerd, Kachan says cheerfully, strapping his targets on awkwardly as his gauntlets clacked against each other. The rest of us can stick in a group, hold down the fort and make damn sure nobody gets left behind. A few minutes later, the announcer's voice rang out across the massive arena, and Izuku dashed off towards the city nearby. Behind him, he heard an earth-shattering quake, and the sounds of Kachan barking orders, and curses, at his classmates over the noise of rumbling earth and explosions. Izuku makes his way into the city, quickly parkouring up the side of an alleyway and crouching on a building. He flicks his arm knives out of their shield position and over his hands, creeping along the edge of the small structure in search of prey. Not too long later, a small group of students come running by. Izuku grins savagely, leaping off of the building just as they are passing underneath him, silently plummeting 2 stories towards the student trailing behind his friends. Izuku lands with a thud on the student's shoulders, quickly jamming his blade against the back of his head and knocking him unconscious. The student's quirk, seemingly some form of feather control, fizzles out as he loses consciousness. The rest of his friends turn around at the sudden noise, only to be greeted by their fallen friend and a sinister smirk spreading across Izuku's face. "Good afternoon, my friends," Izuku says cheerfully, triggering his nice mechanisms and letting electricity visible hum through them. "Let's settle this like civilized people, yes? You surrender your targets and bow out, and I don't knock you all unconscious in a variety of painful ways." The students before him hesitated for a few waited moments, obviously shocked by the way their classmate had gone down so easily, and unnerved by Izuku's confidence. Izuku made the most of his time, cataloging the sets before him. 3 students, 2 with visible mutations and 1 without. There was an obvious lion mutant, heteromorph, unlikely to have a secondary quirk, and a girl with webbed hands who probably had an additional water-based ability. The student without an obvious mutation had himself like a ranged quirk user, and Izuku imagined he could fling something from the way his arms were instinctively positioned. The 3 elected not to respond, immediately fanning out to try to surround him. Fanning out? A wise strategy against one person? Your next move will be for the lovely lady to shoot water at me while your lion friend closes the distance? That might have worked if it wasn't so incredibly predictable. Izuku springs into action, already moving when the stream of water shoots towards where he was. The lion hesitates, clearly shocked at being read like a book. Izuku pounces on the ranged quirk user as he is trying to make some distance, knocking aside the floating rock that manifests over the boy's shoulder. 2 quick strikes have the boy down, his movements falling into the predictable pattern that most ranged fighters move along while panicked at close range. Izuku pivots towards the 2 behind him, his face flushed with excitement and twisted into the rictus of a smile. "Exhilarating!" he shouts, starting to advance. "Use your water attack now, the one where you focus it into a beam for extra cutting power." The girl puts her webbed hands together, a shell-shocked look on her face as she follows along with his description, simultaneously to it leaving his mouth. Water squirts out of her hands in a thin stream, shooting towards Izuku. Izuku is already lowering one knife to deflect the stream, and he cackles as the electricity shoots through the water and shocks the girl, leaving her stumbling backwards and checking her hands. "That's more like it! Show me some creativity, please! Give me something good to dissect!" He dashes forwards, engaging the heteromorph as they step forwards to guard their stunned comrade. Claws meet knives over and over, the lion's superior strength offset by Izuku's skill for parrying. One of the knives is out of charge from electrifying the water. By everything the lion strikes, the other knife he twitches. Eventually Izuku's skill overwhelms the lion mutant, and he is sent tumbling to the ground, twitching with a thin gash along his arm. Izuku drops him with a vicious kick to the head, standing over his body and staring down the remaining student. The girl looks at him with terrified eyes, her webbed hands shaking as she looks to be on the verge of tears. "Run?" Izuku suggests in a bright tone, his smile fading into something more natural. "I have all my eliminations right here, no sense in overkill." The girl nods, frantically scrambling away and abandoning her defeated classmates. Izuku quickly taps a ball against all the targets, and chuckles softly to himself as he makes his way to the waiting room. That was chapter 26 and 27 of Brighter Light Darker Shadow. Those 2 chapters were really good. Like chapter 26 with the visitation of Katsuki and Himiko. It was so cute. Chapter 27 with the first round of the practicals and Izuku just dominating a whole group of students. But anyways guys, I hope you all enjoyed these 2 chapters and I see you all next time. Bye!